Good morning, guys. Welcome to Earth Science. I figured I would film outside today because it is a gorgeous day and I'm tired of being cooped up in the house. So hopefully this works. You can see the board. I know you won't be able to see my beautiful face very well, but I'm sure that you don't really care. So we've been talking about planets, and we've talked about Mercury, Venus, and Earth. So we've talked about 3 planets over the past couple of weeks, and I really appreciated seeing your guys' Earth presentations. I thought that was kind of a unique assignment to do. I think it's overlooked a lot of how important Earth is just because we live here and we know it, but it is a really important planet. I'm grateful for your presentations. I do have to apologize. Every once in a while you're going to hear a weird noise. It sounds like this. Probably heard it in the background. That's my turkey. So if you hear that throughout this video, I apologize. Maybe after this video I will show you my turkey and open up the door and you can see who's making that awful noise. Okay, so we're going to actually talk about 3 different planets today. We're going to talk about Mars, we're going to talk about Jupiter, and we're going to talk about Saturn. Now the first one that, first one's obviously going to be Mars. Alright. Known as the red planet because it is red. It's about the quarter of the size of Earth. We already know this. 1/4 the size of Earth. Okay. But Mars is kind of an interesting planet, and I'm going to try and go through these as quickly as possible so you guys aren't overwhelmed with a super long video. Now, the reason why it's called a red planet is because of its soil. So we can actually physically see here on Earth, if you look at nighttime, you can see a super bright star sometimes. It's actually not a star, and it will be Mars, and it's kind of got a red color or a red tint. And that is super, super awesome to be able to see here from Earth since we're so many millions of miles away. And the reason why Mars is red is because of its soil. So over time and weathering and wind and storms and solar heat and all that kind of stuff, it does something very interesting to the soil, and it oxidizes it. Okay, so I have my notes here. Sorry if I keep looking down. I'm looking at my notes because I don't have a table to put it on. It gets that red color from iron oxidation. Okay, now iron oxidation happens here on Earth too. If you leave something out in the yard all winter, some kind of metal object like a shovel or a chain or something, the next year you'll see that it's been rusted. Okay, that rust is iron oxidation. So it's kind of cool that this entire planet has been iron oxidized, and that's why it's red. Now, something that's also pretty cool is if you were to look at a picture of Mars, you would see that it has polar caps. Whoops. Polar caps. Just like Earth does. They're white. They're clear as day. You can see them. But the difference between our polar caps here on Earth and polar caps on Mars is that Mars doesn't have that kind of water. So their polar caps are not made of water. Their polar caps are made of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide that has gotten so cold there that it actually hardens into dry ice. So if you guys make root beer floats or homemade root beer and make root beer floats with them, you put dry ice in the mixture and it kind of gives it flavor and everything like that, boils it, carbonates it, and that's what the polar caps are on Mars, which is interesting. Now, there has been some speculation as, is there water or H2O on Mars? Is there? Well, we don't really know. There are a few scientists that think that there is water underneath the surface. So it's water that has been trapped underneath the surface and frozen. So it won't evaporate or anything like that. I know that sounds weird that when water freezes it evaporates, but it does. Okay. If it gets cold enough, that water will evaporate. But some scientists think it's underneath the crust or the soil. However, there is evidence that there was at one time free-flowing water on Mars, and they can find that out because of they can look at the rocks and the layout of the land, and they see these once riverbeds or areas that could have had a lake, and they look very similar to the places that we have here on Earth that we had water. So here in Utah, we have the Bonneville shoreline, and you can see it all around the mountains. You can see the different shore levels as it rose and as it lowered. In fact, you can't see it, but the mountains here at my house, you can really see them. And they have those kinds of things on Mars, so that there is evidence that there once was H2O or water on Mars. We just don't know of any now for sure. Okay, so that's an important part. That's why Mars is such a interesting planet to think about colonizing or whatever, because it potentially has water and the potential for life. One other thing I want you to remember is it has the largest volcano in the solar system. Now this is kind of cool because Mars is not a very big planet. It's about a quarter of the size of Earth, but it has the largest volcano ever recorded in the solar system. And if you think about earlier in the year when we talked about Yellowstone and we talked about how that's a super volcano here, that volcano does not even compare to this volcano on Mars. So it's got some really interesting things. I would highly recommend going to like NASA.gov or something and looking up the planets and seeing the layout of it. Mars has been pretty studied, so you can see all the different canyons and things that are in Mars or on Mars. Okay, so let me erase this, and we're going to talk about another planet. The next planet we're going to talk about is Jupiter. Okay, Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system. It is massive. It is humongous. And there's actually something on Jupiter that is called the red storm or dot. And the reason why it's called that is because it's a storm. It's like a giant hurricane that you can visibly see from Earth. If you have a telescope, you can see the red dot on the planet. And it goes around, and it's just been going around the planet for a really, really long time. And it's so big that it could fit 3 to 4 of our Earths inside of it. Inside of that storm. Not the planet, but just the storm. So this planet is massive. It has also the potential to become a star, or could have been a star. So taking into comparison that size, it's a little mind-boggling. Now, something cool about Jupiter is that it is a gaseous planet. Okay, it is made mostly of gas. In fact, it's made of helium. Okay, it's made of helium, hydrogen, methane. Okay, and a lot of other gases. So it probably stinks really bad there. But because it's so big, they think that this gas, as it gets closer inside of the planet to where the core would be, is actually a solid, which is very interesting because they think that that temperature inside of that planet could be about 43,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is actually hotter than the sun. It's crazy to think that. However, on the other side, on the opposite spectrum, on the opposite spectrum, you can have an average temperature of negative 235 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's pretty cold there too in the atmosphere. Now, something that's interesting about Jupiter that I wanted to share, if I can find it in my notes, is that there's been studies on the moons. Okay, so Jupiter is such a big planet that things are drawn to it. It's got gravity, and the bigger the object and the more mass the object has, the more things that will be drawn to it. So there's been lots of speculation on how many moons Jupiter has. The last that I have heard and the research I have done says that there's around 79 different moons that orbit Jupiter. Now, give or take a few. The scientists sometimes don't think that certain things are moons if they're too small or if they don't have a consistent orbit around a particular planet. But as far as I want you guys to remember, it has tons of moons. And the reason why I bring that up is because the moons are so important to the study of these planets. A lot of scientists think that these moons actually could harbor more life than the planets. Some of the moons have ice. Some of them have like ice on top and then ocean water underneath it. Some of them have geysers and are geologically active, which is a good sign that they could have potential heat. So there's a lot of different things going on with the moons around Jupiter and Saturn. which is why if you look on your Schoolmaster, you'll see an assignment there that has to do with the moons of these planets, okay? So make sure you check that out. But it is a humongous planet, okay? Now I'm going to erase it, and we're going to talk about Saturn. But before we talk about Saturn, on your Schoolmaster, it does say that in this video, I'm going to give you a special word. And that special word is going to be given here in just a second, so I can make sure that you watch the video. All you have to do is shoot me an email saying this is the special word that I said, and then you'll get your points for that day, okay? Or for watching the video. Now, the special word is pineapple, okay? Pineapple, because I love pineapple. Don't forget it. Pineapple. Write it and send it to me in an email. All right, last planet we're going to talk about is Saturn. Saturn is one of my favorite planets just because it's so beautiful with its rings. It's the iconic ring planet, okay? Now, it's kind of interesting to think that in a couple 100 million years or even more, those rings will no longer be there, okay? But right now, we can still see them. They're beautiful, okay? It is the 6th planet from the Sun. It is the 2nd largest planet in our solar system, so it's just smaller than Jupiter, but still quite a bit bigger than Earth. Okay, something interesting though is it's one of the less dense planets in our solar system. In fact, it is so less dense and very, very light that if it were small enough, if it were small enough to be like a basketball, but everything else about the planet was still true and the density and everything like that, if we were to throw it in a bucket of water, it would actually float. So that is pretty interesting. The entire planet is so, I don't know, less dense that it could float on water. It's pretty cool to think about. Now, again, its atmosphere is made up of similar stuff like hydrogen, helium, okay? Hydrogen, helium, ammonia, methane, very similar to Jupiter, okay? So it's got a lot of the same types of gases. It's going to stink there. It's a very gaseous planet. Now, there is some theory that there is a rock or center to Saturn, but there's no way to really know that because satellites are unable to penetrate through the atmosphere since it's so big and so much going on in there. They've not been able to do that, but there is a theory that there's like a rock core or center to Jupiter, or excuse me, to Saturn. Now, Saturn has around 30 moons. Okay, still a lot of moons. It's a large planet, so obviously things are going to be drawn to it because of gravity. But there is something I want you to know. Some scientists think that anything that orbits a planet that's natural, okay? Anything that orbits a planet that's natural and of some significant size is considered a moon. Now, if you think about this and think about the rings of Saturn, so the rings are usually large chunks of ice, okay? They can be like the size of cars, they can be the size of basketballs, they can be the size of houses or mansions, even bigger sometimes, okay? So they're made of ice, they're made of rock. Now, there's some scientists that think that each one of these ice cubes or these rocks that orbit in the rings are moons. So if that were the case, then Saturn would have tens of thousands, if not millions or billions of moons orbiting its planet, which is kind of cool. Now, what I want you to realize about rings is that our Earth actually had a ring at one time. Don't know if we've really talked about it. We probably missed it just because of this virus thing, but our moon was formed by a smaller planet that collided with Earth billions of years ago. And as it collided with Earth, it shot things around Earth, from Earth and that other planet, and eventually we had a ring of all this debris going around the Earth, and little by little those clusters became bigger and bigger and bigger until we have a moon. So if you think about Saturn and all those different ice rocks and things that are out there, they could combine together and ultimately make more moons or one giant moon, okay? It's kind of interesting to think about. Yeah, so I think that's all I have on Saturn. and those 3 planets we're going to talk about. So make sure that you guys check your Schoolmaster and get your assignments taken care of. I tried to make them as easy as possible this week, but I apologize if they aren't. But you guys are all doing well, and because you have been graced with my turkey making all this kinds of noise, I'm going to show you my turkey and my chickens. And here's the culprit, right there. That's the one. Yep. Hi, bud. Yep. Okay, so hope you guys are doing well, and I will talk to you soon. And if you have questions, please let me know. Contact me. All right, bye.